Brigatito, Fuecoco, and Quaxley! Hey everyone, this is Mako, and welcome back to another episode of Tours Plaza Classic. Last time, we've covered round one's predictions, predicting the matches that warrant a prediction, and even covered some of the players who I'm looking forward to, the players who I'm interested in looking forward into this tour. This time, we are going to cover round one's recap and some round two predictions because round two just dropped today, and we're all pretty excited. So I've already spoken at length about the tier of round one, which is OU plus Mega Evolutions. A very fine choice for a first tier, if I do say so myself. Like, you got 128 lucky bastards competing in this mega tournament of death, so it is only natural that you give them the simplest of tiers to work off of it. And it's still, but with the added addition of mega evolutions, that still fit the bill of what Plaza really is. What I don't want to talk about is the utter uncaring, like, you can't even fill up every single winner here, Frostpixel. I mean, come on. On. I know you're updating this, but this is the original, so don't be lazy and update the thread for once. Jesus Christ. So instead of talking about the matches as they have been happened in this kind of order, I'm instead going to be talking about the matches in chronological order, and that is the matches that are played because the rest are coin flipped. The matches that were played and uh, have games, basically have games posted, so we can just kick back, relax, and rewatch these matches. So let's kick it off with the first game, which Ian posted, which was Temp winning over Why My Name Is Jeff. It was a pretty showcasey match for Temp, essentially getting back into the Tours Plaza spirit and actually winning for once, unlike TPP. Temp absolutely played well here in these matchups. They both used Rain in game one, in which Kingdra ultimately ended up sweeping in the end. Very cool there. Game two was pretty interesting. You got a Volcarona sweep in the end. However, Why My Name Is Jeff tricked with his Tapu Fini voice specs to Temp's still sweeping Volcarona, and ended up carrying the win here and the win, and was sealed in two games. Very nicely done here. Next game played was. Oops, excuse me. The next game played was OMFG Guy versus Swiftix in what was a game that was not very highly contested, and I felt like both players were really lacking going into this tour, and this was one of the matches I'm sort of kind of interested in looking forward, because these are two players who really don't have a main, who never really play in tours all that much. So it was pretty interesting to see OMFG Guy win over a global driver. There were they both used the same team, so these two are basically identically the same game. Poor Ferrothorn was pretty underutilized. Couldn't really get had some kills in. Interesting to note that Zapdos O-code Scizor twice in both games. And it was at full health too. So Zappy, so I think that Scizor was just minus negative special and defense investment. And another interesting note that I have here is that Kingdra outspeeds Mega B in Rain. I should have realized that long ago. So ultimately, OMFG Guy ultimately took the win here. Very, very impressive win. So next up, we got Sushi Yuki versus Purple Diamond. Purple Diamond brought a PU team for this. It had Gigolith, it had Salazzle, it had Serena. It was just a PU level team working against Sun, because Sushi Yuki brought Torkoal, Venusaur, Aurora, and the likes. It was a very identical, again, another identical series with both games pretty dominant wins by Sushiyuki over Purple Diamond. It was not a very surprising turnout. but you can get the idea that some of these players are just here to meme, which is Plaza, basically a meme. All right, next up we got Cyrenix defeating Limpy Lucario. Huh. So in game one of their series, Limpy Lucario turn one had a misclick. He switched in his Pelipper undefiably against the Volt switching Rotom. That was bad. And that ultimately cost Limpy Lucario a disadvantage. Um, he never really fully recovered from that, and so Cyrenix was able to just chip away at the wins. Even with a Dragonite, he was able to chip away the win away from Limpy Lucario and basically steal game one. And in game two, it was not much better for Limpy, honestly. Like, he was setting up a Gyarados with Substitute. He was setting up against a Ferrothorn. You never stay in with a water type against Pharaoh, ladies and gentlemen. Unless you resisted or, you know, you had some kind of level to deal with Ferrothorn, you just never stay in with him. And that's one of the many factors that Limpy lost here. Even with a Halucha team, even the Halucha trying to sweep mentality ultimately failed because it died by a Psy Shock. It was a crit, but it didn't really matter because it was physical defense. Yeah. Halucha team, even with the Halucha, Limpy just couldn't pull it off, and Cyrenix ultimately took the win there. Very impressive. Next up was TX It X Ass, or TX as I'm gonna call him now, versus Yak Attack. Yak Attack brought a very interesting rain team. It had a white herb Kingdra, which is only really useful for Draco Meteor and nothing else. But yeah, but credit to Yak Attack, he actually took the win here because of Megapert's Power Up Punch, which it kept hitting, and ultimately Liquidation, coupled the fact that it was still raining, so Megapert Swift Swim just kind of sweeps through everything. Game 2 was pretty interesting as well. It had Bulldoze Ferrothorn in Yak's side, which was, I think it was pretty interesting. Moltres proved very useful for a bit because after the turn of rain was ended, Moltres provided a really sneaky flamethrower in order to kill Ferrothorn there, and that that was one of the many factors that TX Exitas won game 2. Game 3, it was a fine game, I guess. It was just a fine game. Really, the advantages of building 3 teams as opposed to 1 is like you have more leverage, and well, I'm not saying that you should definitely counter teams, but it's definitely a strat you can do when building against for a build heavy tier such as TPC, a build heavy tour such as TPC. So building 3 teams, it definitely has its advantages and disadvantages because it rots your brain. So game 3. So going back, game 3, pretty well played game. And what really drove me insane though is that Kingdra. I really wish Kingdra would have had a played a bigger role because it fell to a pretty bad switch. Urshifu was basically close combating everything, and had Pelipper stayed in, Urshifu would have likely died, I guess, and Yak Attack would actually have a better chance of winning. But then he switched into Kingdra, and that was O-code by Urshifu, ultimately died at the end. So yeah, TX ultimately won the series. Pretty well earned win because TX I think he's a new player definitely, but I think he has potential. I mean, I faced him before and he's pretty good, so keep an eye out for that. Next up, we got Wilsky versus Silver Gigolith. First game, Wilsky really only needed Tran and Coco to win and to basically sweep 6-0 game 1. So not really much to talk about there. Game 2 though was pretty interesting because Wilsky brought a Tornadus Icy Wind. Icy Wind Tornadus, definitely a good touch because you need to stop all those Swift Swim sweepers out there from really wrecking house. So you try to lower their speed. thanks to Icy Wind, and it only hits not 5% of the time, 95% of the time. Anyway, Silver Gigolith really should have played his Bucephalon more effectively than it did. It should have been the win con, because look at this team. Silver Gigolith had a Bucephalon. It really could have taken out Coco. It could have taken out Melmetal. It could have taken out Lando and Tornadoes. May have a harder time against these two, but he's got coverage. So yeah, it was a pretty bad loss by Silver Gigolith. Also I put in as a note, Hurricane only missed once. LOL. That was an acronym for home. Anyway, not calling anyone a homo, of course. That was just bad out of context. Anyway, next up, we got Lichen versus Martin V Tran. Definitely an upset, but was it really though? Nah. Because the first game, and you see Lichen's first team, Galvantula and OU? Really? When there's better web setters out there? Yeah, there's Rabambi, but Rabambi would honestly be a better choice than Galvantula. Yeah, I guess Thunder, because you need this, and this. But really, no. Just if you want a web setter, you should definitely use Rabambi. Other than that, keep Galvantula out of OU. Also, the fact that he used Mega Charizard Y, not a very good choice, especially against rain heavy Gen 8 OU. And interestingly enough, that I think it was Martin who brought Iron Head over Gyro Ball on his Ferrothorn. Very interesting take there. So I'm waiting to see what happens. So I'm pretty interested to see what happens there. Yeah, Lichen took the win here with Dragon Dance, dual wing beat on pretty much everything. But it wasn't. I mean, I don't want to rag on the guy, but it was a risky but effective win nonetheless. Uh, Game two, very much better for Martin, because the end game featured Tangrowth and Slowking basically regenerating buddies. They kept regenerating against Lechen's only water type team at the end there. It was like what, 2 against 4, and Tangrowth and Slowking basically worked off each other very well, um, and ended up taking the win. It was a very very solid strat that not a lot of people really use, but for this case, it proved very effective, and it did, and it showed. Third game, there was only real one highlight in this match, and that's Lechen actually using Explosion on Diancie, on Slowking, on Martin Slowking, which killed it. That was a very smart choice. That was a very smart play. Otherwise, the game was fine. And Martin, and as you can see, Martin absolutely took the win. I think, which one? Which one was it? I think it was High Dragon or Lopunny or whatever. But someone ultimately took the win conned it, and Legend was proved beaten and out of it, which was a real shame because I thought the Plaza Grinders would absolutely wreck house. But there's one gone, so I guess not. Next one, Nate 5011 versus a frickin' Eevee. Not really much to say here. I think both games were very solidly played by Nate. Freaking Eevee just didn't have a prayer of a doubt that he was up against Nate here. Very, very effective win by Nate, of course. So yeah, yeah. Uh, if I was gonna cover everything and yet I didn't cover a match, how hypocritical of me. Anyway, next up we had Bab defeating his opponent, by having it take place in Gen 8 Mix and Mega. Guys, there is a code on the front of the Smug on thread page. Use it. Uh, it was a pretty good win. It was a pretty good win, but it was tainted by the fact that even we couldn't even see Battle 2. I guess didn't save it. I don't know. But yeah, from what we can see in the battle, like Bab played okay. Like he played decent and not really remarkable by by any stretch. So yeah, I can't really judge fairly on this one. So we'll see what happens. Let's see what happens in round two. Next up, Belor versus Tara 204, which they used they used the same team for all three games. Belor used Sun, no Sand. Sorry, Tara used Sun with a very interesting choice of mons. Yeah, you got your Torkoal. Yeah, you got your Venusaur. Yeah, you got your Charizard. But Ditto, Hatran, never really see them in a Sun team. I guess before DLC 1 or whatever, but never really see them otherwise. And interesting also on Belor's team, you got Double Eight and Nihilego over there. Interesting. First game, Charizard missed a Focus Blast on T-Tar. Tara quits. A much better game though in game two, with Ditto acting as the revenge killer for for Belor's whole team, and that brought it to a tie, where Belor played a much more tactical game three. Tara hard switching Ditto into Latias was a very risky choice. I didn't like that. Honestly, what Tara should have done if they wanted to win is that they should have focused on eliminating T-Tar as quickly as possible, so that Torkoal could easily bring out Sun, and unfortunately, it didn't happen. So that was kind of sad. That was pretty unfortunate. But it was a pretty well played game by both opponents, and yeah, not really much else to say. What very well played games. Next up is Mil Milli Me. I had fun pronouncing this name. Um, Mil Milli Me versus Doc 1203. Looking at it from preview, very interesting choice of Mons. You never really see Mega Mawile make an appearance in OU, but it did, and it did prove to be a star in the making because it was just turning out these massive hits, but it got burned. It got burned, and it was bad. So, yeah, Mawile ended up being useless after it got burned. And Dragapult, it really should have been used very effectively, but unfortunately it didn't. And so Doc was able to take the win in game one. Game two, very much better turnout for Mill. I think he or she really stepped it up. Um, Having Halucha get leech sheeted hard was very pivotal because that would have prevented the sweep from happening, and it was glorious. And in the end, Millie Me just um, took the win there. Game three, uh, Doc made a horrible miscalculation by hard switching Kartana, in which Lele ultimately moonblasted the heck out of Kartana and ultimately died. And the fact that Lele was Scarf was also very pivotal because it ultimately won Mill the series. It was a very good performance by Mill to let Lele stay in and ultimately pick up wins via the scarf. So interesting, very interesting. Next up is Baskar versus Reaper Dude. Next up is Baskar versus Reaper Dude. Baskar played a pretty interesting game. Him here, I definitely outplayed Reaper Dude at all costs, and even providing some pretty good sets. Like Poison Jab Excadrill was definitely never seen in an Excadrill unless you're memeing, and of course the end game was pretty glorious with uh, Grassy Glide hide by the Rillaboom on the Dragapult. Dragapult still manages to stay in, gets a Dragon Dance, and sucker punches Rillaboom to death, and then immediately go into Phantom Force the top of Coco in order to take game one. Game two, another pretty even contest, I'd say. I love. It was interesting the fact that tornadoes had air slash over hurricane because I thought, well, okay, air slash is more accurate and can give you flinches, but unless you're Togekiss, I don't think air slash is gonna hit that 30% of the time. It's just like Scald. But credit to Beskar for playing that endgame beautifully with Toxapex. Like it kept walling all those hits very, very effectively. And yeah, it might die to a Rillaboom, but it allowed Diancie to pretty much take the win there by a Moonblast. It was a very good. It was a very good way for Beskar to end the series. A very dominant series over Reaper Dude. Incredible there. All right, time to roast me. All right, now you get your roasting ready because I lost to Diego. Credit to Diego, though. He's a very competent player when I faced him. And also, to be fair to myself, I was playing at 9 p.m., which my brain was rotten like hell. So, I definitely could have played this better. I was using a temp team, and they just sucked against this team in particular. Um, I I was playing pretty effectively in the first few turns, but then I knocked off the Blissey, which I've already tricked Finny with Choice Scarf. I shouldn't have done that. I really shouldn't. My goal was to lock Blissey into using the Choice Scarf, but my boneheaded decision proved that I wanted I go for knockoff because I wanted to get rid of some other item, I guess. But yeah, I did get the necessary status conditions I wanted. Like I got the burn on Scizor, I got the paralyze on the Tornadus. But then Garchomp happened. Garchomp had Sword Stance, Scale Shot, Fire Fang, and Earthquake. That 6-0's my team. And you can guess what happened. I lost pretty bad game 1. Game 2 was an even worse. I came off even worse looking at game 2 because it was rain against a team that because it was my rain against his team that basically counters rain. But yeah, once Zapdos was gone, I had no proper switch-ins. Maybe a Scizor, but that couldn't take hits for beans. It was going to be a star, but it got burned, which is basically GG for me. So there you go. I'm out. I'm out of TPC. I couldn't recreate the magic that I did back in TPI2, but you know what? I'm gonna create some magic of my own by covering TPC in full. You're welcome. So next up, we have 7U9I2 versus Ethan347. Ethan played like a newcomer. No, just kidding. I'm mean today. Wow. Um, 7U9I2 played pretty excellently in these first two games. There were a couple of boneheaded decisions by Ethan, like him staying in with Pelipper against Ninetales. Like, bruh. I know. I was like, bruh, when Ninetales a little revealed Hale. But you know what? Bruh moment for an even bigger bruh moment for Ethan347 by staying in with Pelipper and allowing it to kill, basically killing off any momentum that he would have had when he didn't have it. When he had a team, he had a great team, and he killed the setter. And just the fact that game 1 was just a big over predicting hell. Like it was over predicting hell for Ethan because he really didn't play this well. 7U9I2 kind of just dominated him, and Scizor ended up sweeping with bullet charge, like bam, 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 bam. Like it was not a pretty sight. Hey, game 1, game 2, 7U9I2 really brought stall. But what's even memeier is that Ethan brought a pretty whack team. Hmm. No, this was not it. This was my embarrassment. Let's actually play the one. Yeah, right here. This team, you thought it was a pretty good OU team. But look at the sets. I mean, okay, first of all, the Tyranitar, which I can understand to an extent. It might have had Expert Belt or something like that. Or Assault Vest. I don't know. But starting with the Dragapult, look at that. Draco Meteor, Dragon Pulse, Dragon Claw. What? What? And that's not all. Look at the heat trend. Earthquake, eruption, fire blast, and body slam. What? And that's not all. Oh, guess what? That's not all for the weird stats. You look at this Urshifu. Stone Edge, okay. Focus Blast, Close Combat, and I don't know what the last move is, but you get the idea. What a weird team. But yeah, he basically memed it. The only explanation I can think of is he basically memed it. So yeah, that was the end for Ethan, and 7992 got a free win, able to go on into round two. Very very impressive there. Next up, one of my favorite matches of this week. It is Grandmaster versus Instruct. This was a really well played game from either side. Both of them really brought to the table. But what really sold me on the fact because of Instruct, you think it's got Magic Guard. You think this thing had Magic Guard because his own Clef was actually setting up against him, and you thought it was gonna be Magic Guard, but nope, it was freaking unaware and it killed the Clef, and it killed it did a lot of damage to Heatran, Toxapex, Zapdos, all that good stuff. So yeah, that was the reveal of the unaware Clef was very good, and it's just a well booked match to be honest. It was very good. Game two, it was Rain versus Rain. Guess which weather won. Um, the I definitely like the tornado set, even though I think we've seen it before. The hurricane, weather ball, U-turn, toy specs kind of deal. Other than that, though, that was another pretty well played game, and Instruct definitely brought it and won. A very effective win, a very very effective win by Instruct. Next up was Amber versus Femi Jargo. Great name. Game one, Femi Jargo had a Hale team, which was pretty interesting. But Amber got Sun, and guess which one won? That was game one in a nutshell. Game two, though, once he got rid of Mega Sceptile, because Femi had a Mega Sceptile on this team once, he added in Mega Gallade in the end, and oh boy, it really turned the tables on Amber, because Femi Jargo, both game two and game three, were both very, very well played by Femi Jargo. Once game three, once Pelipper was down, Femi just had the better long term game because it had Mega Gallade in it, and Ninetales and Arctozolt were staying in against everything that was weak to those particular mons, allowed Femi Jargo to end up winning the game. Very, very cool there. Next up, a surprising win here. Delta 4 beating Toxinix. Wow. I was really looking forward to Toxinix kind of shredding through this tour, but no, we didn't get that. First of all, odd team choice, Porygon Z? Really? In OU? I mean, I get it. If you want to have a really nice, nasty HO team, but still, eh. I think the turning point of this whole game was Charizard surviving 1 HP of a Barracuda's liquidation. Granted, it was in Sun, but it really could have killed there. But unfortunately, that didn't happen, and Nex ultimately lost that. Pain to see there. Game two, this one hurt if you're a Mega Charizard X fan because Toxinix's Mega Charizard X was ready to sweep, ready to take home, but then it got parried and critted to death. Unfortunate turn of events there for Mega Charizard X. Even Halucha couldn't save Nex from winning a game, so Nex ultimately lost. It was a pretty sad way to win. It was a pretty sad way to lose. And hopefully Toxinix comes back in future Plaza events. Hopefully. Next up is Saba versus Rinse Cycle. Not really much to say here. Saba really really just played well. Game 1, once Pelipper was gone, Saba just kept his Kartana in check, just kept it at the back of the party, and allowed it to sweep Dragapult, then Pelipper, and then finally Mega Swampert. Very well played game by Saba in Game 1. Game 2, ooh, nothing to say either. It's just another very well played game with Saba this time using Stall to a very effective win. Again, Saba, one of the most underrated Plaza players of all time. So definitely go support Saba if you can. He's a really good player and a really good weeb. Next up is Eufanos versus Hello Krakow. Great name. I want to highlight Eufanos' team because my god, it is because my god, it is so good. So good. So where is it? Right here. So Eufanos, pretty good team. Had a pretty good team here. Let's highlight the first few turns. Grimmsnarl had a ring target. That was already a pretty worried sign. Also, had survived a thing. And then he used Thunderwave to basically get the Swift Swim Seismitoad out. I love it. And then Regieleki ultimately did the thing with Electro Ball. Did the thing that it was meant to do. Very good. It was a very well played game by Eufanos. And Rapid Spin actually benefited because it was in rain. Once Rapid Spin got into work, the Barraskewda was just basically outsped, and Regieleki basically swept. Very, very good performance there by you. I'm proud of this man. Number 2, game 2. The man brought Araquanid Power Split and Jirachi. Again, showing his range of great building prowess and just thinking outside the box. Nothing really, nothing really to say here. It's just a very, very good game by Eufanos, and definitely someone you should definitely look forward to in the following rounds of TPC. This guy's gonna make an impact. Next games were Sificon and what was his opponent? Max Huige. Um, Game 1, Siffy brought Shuckle. Sadly, though, Mega Scizor was just too much of a threat and basically KO'd half of Siffy's team. And unfortunately, Sificon had to drop a game. However, in games 2 and 3, Siffy bounced back, and basically it followed the same formula of Barraskewda half sweep, half sweeping a team, and then Swampert cleaning it up. But in game 3, Tornadoes actually got the W. Ooh, so yeah, it was a very, very good win here by Sificon. Another very well played game by the veterans. The veterans keep coming back. Next up was Hale versus Elliot the DM. They again played in Gen 8 Mix and Mega. Ugh, guys. Okay. So, not really much to say for these two games. It was just basically Hale getting an easy opponent and winning. It was definitely the player skill was definitely like very evident here. Like it's an established Plaza player versus the newcomer, and guess who won? Next up, some substitutions happened. We got EU versus Velvet, which happened, and it got a coin win. No, actually, no. Velvet actually gave the win to EU. Surprise there. Then we had Starreal versus Magirna the boss, which is actually a pretty good matchup on paper. But then they had scheduling problems, and then it was forced to be a coin flip, in which Starreal won. Sad. The third matchup, Woman versus Team Charm. That's exactly what the next match was. And it was a woman win. Huh? No. Credit to woman though. Oh, yeah, the first game was pretty hacksy. Pharaoh got a freeze, for example. But Finny Tapu Fini in women's side really really worked wonders because it was down like what 2-5 against Charm's team. Woman ended up using the Finny set, which I'm very very proud of, which is the Calm Mind, Taunt, Draining Kiss, Scald set, which ended up working wonders against Charm's whole team. And Charm really had to struggle against this whole team. And yeah, Woban ended up taking the win here. It was pretty evident that Woban really improved after BLT last year and really tried to prove himself as a competent player. And it really showed here, even beating someone with the reputation as Team Charm. Um, Game 2, Hazard Stack proved very effective because Nihilego's Toxic Spikes, along with Ferrothorn and Lando, Stealth Rock Spikes, all that. That was proven very effective. I don't know why Woban was trying to sack Nihilego when it ended up maturing and it ended up winning the game for him at the end. Couldn't have foreseen that. Charm's biggest problem in this series is that he couldn't bring Corvi out safely to defog. It was always up against like things that could kill it or leech cheating Pharaoh. So he had problems there, and Woban ended up taking the win. A very surprising Woban win, but a Woban win. Woban would be Team Charm. That's a sentence I never said. I never would have said in like 6 months. Next up, we had Shadow Master versus Street Boom. This was a pretty This was a pretty match. I mean, I know I praised it in my video and saying, "Oh, this is going to be a highlight match. People are going to like this one." No, it just ended up being eh. Like for example, game 1 was pretty unremarkable to be honest. Like you had semi-stall here with Shadow Master side versus Street Boom's whole big bad bulky OU team. There were some good ideas, like Slowbro being the one to be Mega was pretty interesting. Unfortunately, the matchup just caught up, and Dragonhead was able to sweep through the entire team, ultimately taking out the win. So that was good. That was case 1. Case 2, game 2. Oh boy. This was a really bad game, you guys. This was really bad. First off, why did Street go for defog against his rocks? I'm guessing that was a misclick on his part, but that one was kind of But there was also the crit on Clef, which was a pain. What Street really should have done to win this game is that he should have tried to kill Eleki with Lando because Eleki was just killing a lot of the Mons in Street's team. If he had brought in Lando, because Eleki is only really known for normal and electric moves, he would have had the chance. While he still had it, like Lando would have killed it, but no, he didn't. He didn't foresee that, and Shadow ended up taking advantage of that for fact and winning against Street Boom. So again, return of the Plaza players. Very, 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 very exciting there. Eight's back in returning form, winning against Giga Chandelure. First matchup, Finny critting Clefable was pretty unfortunate. They were both at 4. They were both at +6, but Eighth had to kill it. Unfortunately, Eighth's bad matchup against Giga Chandelure's team caught up to him, and ultimately Giga Chandelure ended up taking the win there. Game 2, Eighth played much better. Special invested Ferrothorn works really well in this matchup. Very, very interesting. There was also a Strength Mega Lopunny. That was pretty interesting. Not return, um, not even double edge. Yeah, that was interesting in and of itself. And then finally, the final point I'm gonna make is that Barraskewda, despite being -3 in attack, kept on sweeping, and that's why Eighth is a goat, and ultimately took the win in there in both game 2 and 3. It played much better there than in the first game. Next up was Go the Prince versus Geo. this was a very sad display. I really thought Geode had this in the bag, but I guess she was low on motivation again. I really told Geode like multiple times to not lose motivation, just not lose determination. Don't beat yourself up quite a lot. Because deep down, she's a really good player deep down, but uh, against all odds, and the fact that she had a pretty bad matchup here in game one proved to be self-evident of Geoff's she lost her spirit that way. Uh, Game two was pretty simple, but it was just very unwinnable. The matchup itself was very unwinnable, and that ultimately cost G the game and the series. And so Geoff ends with me and Toxinx as people who lost in 2 games. Sad days. All right. Next up, we got Axe versus Stitchu, which is the highlight match of the week. Unfortunately, both players would like to forget about this matchup because the matchup did kind of suck. The series did kind of suck a bit. Um, First off, game one, why did Axe sack the Dragonite? Like it could have been a sweeping killing machine here, especially against this kind of matchup. But no, Dragonite was basically cannon fodder. But Temp the Gallade proved to sweep pretty much all of Stitch's remaining mons. And yeah, Temp the Gallade beat Stitch once and for all. That's a nasty little in-joke for you Absols out there. Game 2, it really only had one. It was a mostly well-fought game, but it had only really one notable highlight in which turn 38, Garchomp hit all Rock Blasts on this Tornadoes. And then Tornadoes, or I think it was Zapdos, either one, hurricaned and confused the Garchomp, which was very funny. But yeah, it was a very well fought game. Otherwise, Buzzwole was just a natural win con, and both had it, but Stitches ended up mattering in the end with the close combat and Ice Punch routine. That was pretty neat. And so yeah, Stitch ended up tying the game. The last game, I caught this one live. I had to watch it in secret, but yeah, I caught this one live, and oh boy, this was a pain. This was a kind of a painful matchup. So I had a lot of things to say while I was watching this. Like first off, Axe really only needed Charizard X and Weavile to win. That was no Charizard Y, excuse me. But yeah, you only needed Charizard and Weavile to win because everything just dies to it. Stitch really should have saved Latios a lot if you wanted to, take out this. Um, Latios was definitely it, or this. But yeah, the ending. If he really kept his Lando, Stitch would have likely won. But in the end, Axe just got the better matchup and the better play. Ultimately, Axe won. So sorry, Stitch. Hi, we're in the Losers Club now. And lastly, the last matchup, because the rest are decided by a coin flip. I mean, look at these. Look at these. Even the Carl Dude Guy Kepper one, which I was really excited for, got demoted to just a coin flip. Pain. Next up, this will be the last matchup. We got LPH versus Fleeting Memories, and it was very anticlimactic. LPH just outplayed, even though like I kind of complained because Clef versus it was at one point this match became Clef versus Volk, and Volk always wins against Clef even with +6 on all fronts. But a bad switch to Lando cost Fleeting Memories the whole game, and LPH just kind of smoked him in the end. So that was pretty unfortunate. Game two, it was really just Buzzwole and Mega Garchomp solo carrying LPH. Like the rest could be just be fed to these guys, and these two would have probably still sweep. because both had interesting sets. Like Garchomp, you know what set does as the scale shot sword stance, which I'm very afraid now. And Buzzwole just thunder punching this, and then this to end up winning the series overall. So that was fun. So yeah, that would be it for the matchups in round one. So now let's move on to round two, which I can just view here via the challenge because I'm too lazy to check out this Magan one. And there's too much info here. Alright, so round two, let's predict. Let's predict some matches. First up, Temp versus Instruct. Highlight match right off the gate. This is a rematch from TPP, in which Temp lost big time in Kamamana type. Um, oh yeah, I forgot to mention the round two tier here is Godly Gift Shared Power. It's an OMM. So it's a OM's matchup. So Godly Gift Shared Power, very interesting choice. Like this is definitely a step up above OU. If I were Frostpixel who's hosting, I would have had like a very similar tier and then just build up into the most difficult of tiers in the finals. But you know what? So let's compare. So let's get onto the matches, shall we? So first off, Temp versus Instruct. Um, in terms of their OMM game, I think Temp narrowly edges Instruct, but in terms of playing, I think Instruct has the more has the better play. Right? So who am I gonna predict here? I think I'm gonna get back up Temp just because of his building style and you never know. Temp can easily pull off some pretty nasty wins, and he will get revenge over Instruct because um, that would be pretty interesting if Instruct wins and goes 2-0 against Temp. That would be kind of a story. So yeah, I can see both winning, but I'm going with Temp on this one. All right, next up, Mr. Bossaroo versus Diego Yuhi, the man who beat me. I would have faced Mr. Bossaroo if I won, but I would have had trouble contacting him, honestly. Anyway, this one I'm gonna give to Diego. I think him impressing me during my match with him, it just feels right. It just feels right to lose to a competent player. I think Diego definitely has the matchups in the bag. So I think Diego is going to move on to the next round. All right. Next up, 7U992 versus the Dragon Master. This one's a underrated match. I don't think many people would consider this a highlight match. I think this is going to be a dark horse. I think we're going to look at something special, you guys. So 7U992 has played in Plaza before, but Ad actually is more experienced in mashups, and since this is a mashup, you know where this is favored. So I'm actually going to be favoring the Dragon Master. Yeah, I'm gonna favor Adivata over 7U99. Like 7U992 may be the better player, but it all depends on the tiers and the building. I think the team really matters. So unless 7U992 gets a really good matchup against Advt, I think I'm gonna still pick Advt. So let's see. Prove me wrong, 7U992. Next up, huge noob Lamau, who is actually Pikasup on Pokemon Showdown. A little background on Pikasup. It's another one of the Plaza grinders. Very competent, but I wouldn't say he's like the best Plaza grinder. Or, I mean, right now he just gave up the most recent cycle to Grandmaster, so, eh. So he's up against Elfuzon, who we have not seen compete yet, and who me and PokeArt have described as a potential star in the making. This one's gonna be interesting. Both never really play OMMs all that much. So in terms of performance, I would give it to Elfuzon. So I think Elfuzon definitely should pick up the win here, adding into a pretty impressive resume of people. Next up is Edenwood versus Scaved. Unfortunately, this is a 50-50 because I don't really know both these players all too well. They both won by a coin flip, and especially Edenwood because he beat Derpy Boy by a coin flip. If Derpy Boy would here, I would pick Derpy Boy in a heartbeat, but no. I guess the gacha gods didn't fall on Derpy this time. Next up is Boyne versus Snake 30 Pra. I think Boyne's going to take this. I think this should be no surprise because Boyne actually has connections with the Absols who build specifically OMMs. So it would be easy transition for Boyne to actually make it in and actually win against a pretty relatively newcomer in Snake 30 Pra. So we'll see what happens, but I'm thinking Boyne would win this one. Next up is LPH versus Nate 5011. Both never really dive into OMMs all that much. Although LPH was nicknamed Balanced Nishmons before, so I guess he has OM experience by association. I would predict. No, honestly though, I would predict LPH to win this one because I think generally he's the better player of the two. And the one that just impressed me more. Even though the match he had in the first round was kind of sucky. Next up is EU versus Aethernum. Battle of the two badges. Battle of the two badged users, excuse me. But, this one's pretty hard to match. I've never really seen EU play, so unless he absolutely kills it against Aethernum this week, I'm going to pick Aethernum to win. It's going to be it's either going to be a pretty lopsided match or just the most competitive match between 5 years late into his prime Aethernum and pretty newcomer EU. Interesting. Next up is Tranquility versus Ron 5. This one is a highlight match in my heart and in a lot of people's hearts. Tranquility, very experienced OMM's player. Ron, definitely one of the most improved players all year. So it's a battle between two good players. So can you say that in about 3 years from now? But I'm going to pick Tranquility to win because I think he had the better OMM experience and just the play style that he has is much more suited compared to Ron's. So we'll see what happens. If Ron wins, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'm picking Axe. Next is Sificon versus Oregonode. It's another case of veteran versus newcomer, and since Sificon has dabbled into OMMs quite a bit, I'm going to pick Sificon to win this one. Next up is Moonstark versus Belor. This one's kind of 50-50. Well, Belor kind of impressed me in this match against Tara, but not really by much, and I don't know anything about Moonstark, so I think I'm going to give this a 50-50. So, impress me. Just impress me and actually play your games, but not to mention just play your games, but impress me. So, yeah. I'm like an American Idol judge. Impress me. Impress me, ladies and gentlemen. Next up is TX versus Femi Jargo. Two players that I've covered. This one's interesting, but I'll have to go with TX because I think TX plays a lot more OMMs than Femi Jargo, at least from my personal experience. Actually, I've seen TX in Plaza doing some Plaza tours, which had some OMMs being set every once in a while, and he does quite well in them. Like, he does stab mons pretty well. I think he's got that in spades, and it would be nice to see him transition to another one, which is Godly Gift Shared Power. So this will be interesting. This will be interesting to see. But I'm saying TX to win this one. Next up is Me versus Gee Turtle. Me kind of impressed me in his match against Gee Turtle. No, against Doc, but and I haven't seen Gay Turtle play, so I think by association, I think I'm gonna have to give it to me, just on the basis on that matchup with Doc, like very impressive win over Doc. So I can't wait to see what happens next. Next up is Go the Prince versus LTG. Go the Prince, relatively decent in his matches against Geov. He came off looking kinda good. LTG didn't need to play against Showdown is too cool, so unfortunate there. I think I'm gonna give this to LTG, just on the well, no, actually, let me think about that. Yeah, I think I'm gonna give this still to LTG because I think LTG is a better player. Um, Comparing these two's play skill wise, LTG outweighs Go the Prince. We could have had a Go the Prince versus Geov, of if we can, but no, we're getting LTG kind of winning over. Well, we gotta get LTG winning over Go. Next up is Stuff Ravioli, who beat Casual.exe in a coin flip. Big sad against Mercupti? Hmm. 50-50. Don't know either of these players because I've never seen them play. So impress me. Next up is Saba versus Shadow Master. A pretty highlight match, honestly. Pretty highlight, if I want to consider. Like I've mentioned before, Saba, one of the best, most underrated Plaza players of all time. Shadow Master, a very promising Plaza grinder who is able to go up into um, the ranks of the what the Plaza community calls the epitome of the Plaza grinders. After he defeated Street Boom, so this one's going to be a pretty interesting match. I can't wait to see what happens. So I'm going to pick Saba to win, but I won't be surprised if Shadow Master absolutely like pulls off an underdog win. So Saba, Shadow Master, just give it your all. Go go go. Next up is Delta 4 versus Ozda 12. Delta had a pretty lucky win over Toxinex, and Ozda I never really seen, so 50-50. So impress me, folks. Next up, Kither versus Wilsky. Kither. There's no dice here. Kither wins. Sorry, Wilsky. I know you're a decent Plaza reg, and every time you play in Plaza tours, it feels like a big accomplishment. You were pretty good, but I think Kither is still like undeniably the favorite to win this tour. So sad. Next up is Over Easy 47 versus Dan Garcia. Unfortunately, don't know either of these two very well, and also Over Easy defeated Panu in the coin flip wouldn't because Panu couldn't scan. Ah, sad days. So there you go. Next up we had I Love Bagon versus Mamalu. Wait a minute. Didn't Don Vasquez call act? Or he didn't? Well, let me go check for. Hmm. Hello, Don Vasquez. Where are you at? Yeah, I think Don. Yeah, it was Don Vasquez. Don Vasquez. Don Vasquez should be on here. What? Crazy. Frost Pixel. Frost Pixel. So it should be Don Vasquez versus Mamalu. Who? Frost Pixel. Should change that. Um, but yeah, Don Vasquez versus Mamalu. I think Don Vasquez is gonna win this one. Um, a pretty easy win here for Don, I think, because Don has been involved in the Plaza scene for quite a long time, and he's competed in multiple Plaza events, which is commendable, and he's done pretty well in them. So I will see Don Vasquez like being being the victor in this one. All right, next up, the Bright Rising versus Konaluk. Don't know either of these two, so moving on. 50-50. Impress me, folks. Tailglow VM versus Carl Dude Guy. Ooh. Please, Carl. Please play. Hey. I don't know Tailglow VM, unfortunately. Like, I've seen their name before, but never really saw them play. So I don't have a fair judgment. Meanwhile, Carl is kind of washed. I don't think I've seen Carl play ever since TPP, and that's kind of sad. So I think should I give Carl the win just because he doesn't? Well, he's a more recognizable name, that's for sure. So yeah, I guess just because he's a more recognizable name, I think I'm gonna give Carl the win here. So, good job. Next up, Eufanos versus Bab. Eufanos easily. It may not be Camo, but Eufanos is still a pretty good OMs player, as you've seen by his AAA prowess. Back then. So yeah, Eufanos to win in a pretty curb stompy way. Next up is Donta versus Baskar 20. I think I'm gonna go with Baskar on this one because he genuinely impressed me in this match against Reaper Dude. He looked very strong going in, whereas Donta got the coin flip over Demon Slayer Weave. Alright, next up, Based What versus Ad 67. I can't believe Tech lost the the coin flip. That's another reason for me to get pissed off at Tech. But Base What? I think I'm gonna go with Base What on this. I think despite it's not Uber's, but Base What has potential in him. If he wants to delve into other tiers, this would be a good like experience for him. So Base What definitely to win this one. Next up, Stereo versus OMFG guy. Stereo. There is no questions asked, boys. Stereo is going to win against OMFG guy. If OMFG guy wins, it would better be through hacks. But yeah, Stereo to win that one. Next up, we had Martin V Tran versus Hale. Um, I think this is going to go to Hale. I think this one is going to be pretty easy. Hale has been pretty good. Hale has looked pretty strong against his Elliot, the DM, and now facing a much more competent opponent. No disrespect, of course, but Martin V Tran definitely has potential in him. So it'd be interesting to see this match developing and to see both these players grow. Next up is Cyrenix versus Plimsollpunks. Peep peep. Peep 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 peep. Plimsollpunks, please play. I know you competed in TPP, but in terms of single elimination formats, please don't be washed. You're such a great player. You gave Frizzleweaver the run of his life back in the day, and now that you're finally back, please play some more. So this will definitely be a good showcase match for Plimsollpunks if he does win, and poor Hale in round 3 if Plimsollpunks does return to his prime form. So that'll be interesting. Next up, we have Woman versus Rolski 32. This one's going to be interesting. Woman definitely, like I said before, has improved his stock over after defeating Team Charm, and after BLT is definitely improved in terms of the room tours to the point now where he's actually a decent room reg. Against Rolski 32, who is a OMM mod, definitely does a lot of LC and AAA, but he's still an OMM mod, so he still has some stranglehold over the OMs community, so he's definitely an influencer there. And so I think I'm going to pick Rolski to win just because he's a Filipino boy. Next up is Sushi Yuki versus Mossy Sandwich. I almost said Mob Psycho 100. I'm going to get sued big time. Sushi Yuki versus Mossy Sandwich. The Battle of the Foods. I think Mossy Sandwich definitely should win here. I think they're a more competent, not more competent player. They're a better player. They had better performances back. They've competed in multiple Plaza events, and they've definitely earned their keep as a pretty well-established Plaza player. So I think I'm gonna give it to Mossy. Although Sushi Yuki is gonna give them a fight. Sushi Yuki was no slouch, so we'll see. Sky of Doom versus Geber Melek. I don't know either of these two very well, so again, 50-50. And finally, we got Dan Demand 99 versus Smell You Later. Smell you later. No, I'm definitely gonna pick Dan. If Dan is back in his prime form, because Dan can definitely, he's definitely played well. He's definitely played well in the past. He of course got that legendary 5-0 streak in Ubers in BLT6, but that was eons ago at this point. But yeah, Dan is definitely a player or that should really come back. Like Plimsoll Punks, like both these players should definitely like be in tip top condition if they want to win TPC, and so it'd be interesting to see how are they going to perform in 2022. So yeah, that is the end of round 2 predictions and round 1 recap. My voice has definitely given out because I've been recording for an hour and 5 minutes. So thank you all for watching. Please like this video, leave a comment, subscribe for more, click that notification bell so you wouldn't miss a future upload of mine when my videos comes out, and let's enjoy TPC. Good luck to all the